What is going on, guys, and welcome to my video on the top 10 scariest southern ghost stories. If you like this video, then don't forget to give it a thumbs up and also subscribe, as it really helps me out. Okay, so let's start with number 10, the Bell Witch. Perhaps one of the most notorious ghost stories in the world, Tennessee's Bell Witch legend has been around for over 200 years. In the early 1800s, John Bell moved his family to the northwest Tennessee's Red River settlement. A few years later, Bell encountered strange animal sightings in the middle of his cornfield. The animal had the body of a dog and the head of a rabbit, and when Bell attempted to kill the creepy creature, it ran away. The family after soon began hearing mysterious knockings, rattling chains, faint whispering, and even dog fights in the dead of the night. For years, the Bell family kept their troubles a secret. Finally, John Bell shared his family's troubles with his neighbours, and soon the entire region heard of the Bell's Witch. After years of torment, John Bell was mysteriously poisoned, and the spirits became far less frequent. A number of theories attempt to explain the witch's presence, blaming a series of women, including Betsy Bell herself, but some local folks still insist the strange things still happen around the Red River settlement and blame the Bell Witch. So now it's time for number 9, the ghost of Lavinia Fisher. Many myths surround the legend of Lavinia Fisher, a 19th century Charleston woman convicted for highway robbery and hung just off Meeting Street. Some claim she was America's first female serial killer, based on speculation that she and her husband would lure travellers to their inn, slip poison in their tea, steal their belongings, and carry their bodies out back. However, her and her husband actually belonged to a band of highway thieves and was never accused of serial murder. Still, the details surround her death are chilling, believing that she would pardon up until the moment she was hung. Lavinia, according to the legend, used her last breath to scream, "If you have a message you want to send to hell, give it to me and I'll carry it." Her ghost still haunts the old Charleston's jailhouse, and tourists still claim sightings of her ghostly apparition. So now moving on to number 8, Ghosts of LaLaurie Mansion. To this day, Delphine LaLaurie's extravagant mansion in New Orleans, French Quarter, is the city's most legendary haunted house due to the gruesome torture that occurred over 200 years ago. Dr. Louis LaLaurie and his wife Delphine were once known to be one of Creole society's most influential high society couple. However, Delphine soon gained a reputation for being brutally cruel to her servants, and neighbours began noticing the unexplained disappearance of parlour maids and stable boys. One night, after a fire broke out in the kitchen, firefighters discovered a chilling secret room full of tortured servants. Word spread throughout New Orleans, and angry citizens formed a mob dead set on avenging the tortured humans. The LaLaurie managed to escape to France, and haunted souls began seeking revenge on the building's occupants immediately. The house fell to ruin. No one wants to live in a house haunted by tortured souls. So let's move on to number 7, Hugging Molly. While this story may make you shudder, you should still be glad that you didn't grow up around this variety of ghost. If you are familiar with the Abbeville, Alabama, you've probably heard of Hugging Molly. After all, her name is written on the town's welcome sign. The legend of Hugging Molly traces all the way back to Ireland, but today she roams the streets of Abbeville wearing a long shroud. Hugging Molly appears only to young people out past their curfew. She runs up to these rule breakers, gives them a giant hug, and screams in their ear. For over 100 years, parents have been relying on her legend to teach their kids not to stay out after dark. So it's sort of like the boogeyman, if you're clear with that. So let's get in it with number 6, the ghost of Bellamy Bridge. There are many different versions of this story. Nonetheless, the Bellamy Bridge ghost just might be Florida's most infamous ghastly legend. Bellamy Bridge is an old steel frame bridge that spans the river just north of Marianna. On dark and foggy nights, Elizabeth Jane Bellamy is said to roam the swamps surrounding the bridge, mourning the loss of love cut short. Elizabeth was only 18 when she died, days after marrying her husband, local politician and planter Samuel C. Bellamy. In one version, her extravagant wedding gown caught fire the night of her wedding. In another, she contracted malaria. After her death, her husband, so stricken with grief, eventually committed suicide. Visitors to the Bellamy Bridge claim to have seen fire extending from the bridge, mysterious white lights, and even a ghostly figure of a young woman walking through the fog. So we're halfway there with number 5, the Red Lady of Huntington. In the early 20th century, a young woman named Martha started college at the Women's College of Alabama. Complying with her father's will, Martha's favourite colour was red, and she decorated every surface of her dorm room in Pratt Hall in the crimson shade because she didn't make friends easily. Martha lived alone on campus, and she was very unhappy. She retreated to her room, living in isolation. She only left her bed in the middle of the night. One evening, after failing to attend classes and dinner, Martha was found lying on the floor in her room, dead. To this day, generations of Huntington students have claimed to have witnessed Martha's ghosts, the Red Lady, roaming around the halls at night, emitting strange red glow. So now it's time for number 4, the Myrtles, Chloe. One of the legendary many spirits haunting the Myrtles plantation in San Francisco, Louisiana. The ghost of Chloe may be the most notorious. According to legend, Clark Woodruff, the owner of the estate, was having an affair with Chloe, a house servant. Eventually, Woodruff tired of Chloe, and Chloe, fearing she would be sent back to the fields to work, began eavesdropping on family conversations to see if they spoke of her. Woodruff caught her and cut off her ears as punishment. To hide the scar, she always wore a green scarf. Now, nobody knows if Chloe did what she did next to get back into the family or into the good graces. She slowly poisoned a birthday cake, and Woodruff's wife and 2 children died. The other servants, ashamed of Chloe's evil acts, hung her in a nearby tree. While this legend may be pure folklore, a mysterious photograph of a woman's figure lurking in a shaded corner taken in 1992 has perpetuated Chloe's myth. So now it's time for number 3. Dolly Madison, wife of the 4th President of the United States, James Madison, is one of the country's most beloved First Ladies. Known for turning the DC swamps into a social hub, Dolly endeared everyone with her wit and charm, but she didn't like to be tested. In her time living at the White House, Dolly built a beautiful rose garden. Years later, when Mrs. Woodrow Wilson occupied the White House, she requested the rose garden be replaced. Legend has it that the moment the workers turned their spades, Dolly's ghost arrives and chased them all away. And that sounds like a realistic story about a Southern woman. Number 2. The ghost of Julia Ligar. Legend has it that in the mid-1800s, young Julia was visiting Edisto Island. She fell ill and fell into a deep coma. After being pronounced dead, she was buried in her family's crypt. When her brother passed away 15 years later, her family opened the crypt and found her body pressed against the door. Trying to escape, thought for dead. She had been alive all along. Throughout the years, the crypt's doors would randomly fall open. Eventually, even the chained stone would remain hinged, and even the family members gave up and removed the door entirely. Some locals swear that the scratches on the inside of the crypt were made by Julia desperately trying to escape from being buried alive. That's got to be one of all our worst nightmares. Now it's time for number 1. Ghosts of Wright Square. Savannah had no shortage of ghost stories, and this tale on the Wright Square's ghost may be the creepiest we've heard. The spooky story begins in 1724 after a man was found lying strangled on his bed. Although the deceased man, William Wise, was known to be slightly shady, his death still caused quite a stir in the community. Investigators convinced 2 of his servants, Alice Riley and Richard White. Although the 2 attempted to flee, they were eventually caught and sentenced to death. Alice's execution was delayed until after she gave birth to her son, James. Although Alice adamantly proclaimed innocence, 8 months later she faced Wright Square's gallows. A short while later her son died. Legend has it that she haunts pregnant women and mothers with infants, searching for her lost baby. Next time you're in Savannah, notice the shortage of Spanish moss in Wright Square. According to folklore, Spanish moss will not grow where innocent blood has been spilled. So that is all for this video, guys. If you like this video, then don't forget to give it a thumbs up and also subscribe. You can also hit the bell notification so you never miss any videos. It would greatly help me as well. So that's it, and I'll see you in the next video.